So the UK has these two massive, powerful ambitions. On one hand, it wants to be a global creative superpower, and on the other, a world leader in AI. But what happens when the fuel for one industry is the actual lifeblood of the other? Well, the government tried to find an answer, and let me tell you, it kicked off an absolute policy firestorm.
To really get why this became such a massive issue, you just have to do one thing: follow the money. And what we're talking about here are two incredibly valuable sectors that were put on a direct collision course.
All right, first up, let's look at the reigning champion. The UK's creative industries, we're talking film, music, publishing, the whole shebang. They are an absolute economic powerhouse. In 2023, they contributed a jaw-dropping £124 billion to the economy. Now, this isn't just about culture, you know. This is a fundamental pillar of Britain's economic strength.
Now look at this. This chart paints such a clear picture of the tension here. On one side, you've got that established creative giant, and on the other, the challenger, the AI sector. It's much smaller, for now, sure, at $11.8 billion, but it's growing incredibly fast. The government basically looked at this and saw two golden geese. The problem? They might need to eat the exact same food.
And this right here, this is the government's entire dilemma in a nutshell. How do you protect the copyright that fuels your world-leading creative industries, while at the same time providing the mountains of data that you need to become an AI superpower? It's this core conflict that really set the stage for a major policy battle. So, the government came up with a plan, a really controversial one, designed to give the UK's AI sector a rocket boost. But it immediately set off all kinds of alarm bells in the creative community. And it all revolved around this one technical process called text and data mining. Okay, so TDM is pretty much essential for training most modern AI. You can think of it like an AI reading an entire library, every single book, to learn about language, style, and facts. But here's the legal catch. For that AI to read the library, it has to make a copy of every single book. And that's potentially copyright infringement on a mind-boggling scale. So the government's big solution was this opt-out model. The default setting would be AI developers can use your work. If you, as an artist, a writer, a musician, didn't want them to, the responsibility was on you to put up a special digital keep-out sign. All of a sudden, the entire burden of protection got flipped, landing squarely on the creator's shoulders. So how did this plan go over? Well, to put it mildly, it did not go over well. In fact, it crumbled, and pretty spectacularly. And it really failed for three very clear, very powerful reasons. Let's break them down. First, the public and the industry hated it. The government ran a consultation, and the results? Well, they weren't just clear, they were an absolute landslide. A huge 88% said AI firms should have to get a license, the traditional way. And the government's preferred opt-out plan? It got a measly 3% of the vote. That's not just a rejection, that's a political blowout.
Second, the whole plan was basically a technical fantasy. Remember that digital keep out sign I mentioned? Well, it doesn't really exist in any standard, easy-to-use way. As the House of Lords pointed out here, the tools were a total mess. Expecting every single creator out there to figure out this complicated, fragmented system was, as they put it, an unreasonable burden. It just wasn't practical.
And the third reason? It was just bad business. Honestly, this quote from the report just nails it perfectly. Why would you risk a proven £124 billion industry for what they called speculative AI gains? The creative sector is a sure thing, a known success. Gambling all that away for a still emerging industry was a bet the country just couldn't afford to make. The risk-reward calculation was way off.
So facing a total collapse of support from the public, from a technical standpoint, and from a business perspective, the government folded. The controversial opt-out plan was officially declared dead, and that marked a huge victory for the UK's creative industries and forced a complete rethink of the country's entire AI strategy.
Okay, so the opt-out plan failed because it basically treated all data like a free-for-all buffet. This whole episode forced a really crucial question. If that's not the way, then how do you build a solid data foundation for AI responsibly? Well, the answer seems to lie in a much more structured approach, kind of like a recipe for data that's becoming best practice. It's called the Lake House pattern.
The absolute best way to think about this is like you're cooking a meal. You've got your raw ingredients, then you have your prep mixture, and finally, you have the finished product. In the world of data, we call these the bronze, silver, and gold layers, and each stage has a very, very specific job. So the bronze layer is your pantry. It's where all the raw ingredients get delivered. This is data in its most basic, raw, untouched form. You just dump it in here exactly as you collected it. Yeah, it's messy, but it's your absolute source of truth. The #1 rule is you never, ever change what's in the bronze layer. Now, the silver layer, this is your kitchen prep station. This is where you take those raw ingredients from the bronze pantry and you start to wash them, filter them, combine them, you get rid of the errors, and you start to give the data some structure. This silver layer is the absolute sweet spot for training AI models. It's clean, it's reliable, but it's still got all that rich detail the model needs to learn from. And finally, you get to the gold layer. This is the finished plate of food, all ready to be served. This data is aggregated. It's summarized for specific things, like a sales dashboard or a quarterly report. It's perfect for a quick business insight. But, and this is super important, it's usually way too summarized for training a powerful AI model from the ground up. You've cooked away all that granular detail you had back in the silver layer.
Okay, so the old opt-out model is in the bin. We have a much clearer idea of what responsible data management actually looks like. So, where does the UK go from here? Well, the government is now taking a much more cautious, much more collaborative path forward.
The new approach is basically a complete 180. Instead of opt-out, the starting point is now licensing first, which means AI developers need to get permission. From there, the focus is on practical stuff, coming up with clear labels for AI content, figuring out how to protect us from deepfakes, demanding more transparency about what data is being used for training, and actually helping smaller creators get a fair shot in these new licensing markets.
And that brings us right back to the fundamental question that the UK, and really the whole world, is still trying to figure out. Everybody agrees innovation needs fuel, but this whole U-turn in the UK forces all of us to ask, what's the right price to pay for that fuel? Especially if that fuel is the very art, music, and literature that makes up our culture. That's the conversation that is really just beginning.